What brings us here today, you may be wondering, is the Palestinian Solidarity Day, International Day of Solidarity. The Palestinian International Solidarity Day is observed on the 29th of November and has been since the 1977. This day was chosen because of its significance to Palestinians. The reason it falls on the 29th of November is because in 1947, on the 29th of November, the UN General Assembly adopted Resolution 181 of partitioning Palestine into a Jewish state and an Arab state. In 1948, the Jewish state of Israel was established, but the Arab state never came into being. And so in 1977, the United Nations General Assembly called for the annual observance of 29 November as the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. This day allows us to focus the attention on Palestine and Palestinian struggles. It provides an opportunity for international communities to focus their attention on the fact that the question of Palestine remains unresolved and that the Palestinian people have yet to attain their inviolable rights. It is a way in which we can recognize and acknowledge Palestinian people, their culture, heritage, and traditions as well. I hardly need to remind you of the brutal everyday consequences in the occupied territories. Israel's policy of constructing and expanding settlements on stolen Palestinian land is illegal, discriminatory, and unjust. And as we meet here today, tens of Palestinian villages in the West Bank are at risk of destruction to make way for settlement expansion. And there are daily abuses that Palestinians suffer, the hundreds of checkpoints and closures that restrict movement for nearly 5 million people, the detention of tens of thousands of women, men, and children for months, sometimes years, without charge or trial, the beatings, the torture, the thousands of killings, often unlawful since the beginning of the century, and virtually no accountability. The Israeli military occupation moves forward with the inhumane and illegal blockade on Gaza Strip. 14 years of collective punishment and complete air, sea, and land closure of Gaza devastated the economy and cut off Palestinians from each other and around the world. The Israeli government designated Palestinian human rights and civil society groups as terrorist organizations. This designation is a frontal attack on the Palestinian human rights movement and on human rights everywhere. Human rights defenders from abroad are also being denied entry into the country. The solidarity with the Palestinian people means solidarity with the human rights defenders also. We must support them and call for justice. By recognizing this day, you are standing up against the occupation and you are standing up for human rights of these Palestinians. You are standing up for peace, you are standing up for justice, and you are standing up for basic human rights. We must all speak up against the ongoing violence Israel has been perpetrating against the Palestinian people for decades. Silence in the face of the persecution, disposition, and displacement of Palestinians is not an option. To stay neutral or to use the both sides language is to choose the side of the oppressor. It is not enough to be shocked by Israel's settler colonial violence against Palestinians. Everyone is responsible to speak up and demand that we free Palestine.